After that break, I would like to welcome Dr. Jill Adams. She is a pharmacologist turned science communicator who's worked in academia, industry, and now journalism. She's written for Nature, the Los Angeles Times, and held a column at the Washington Post. She is the perfect person to help us address the role of media itself. What are the responsibilities and challenges of science communicators covering chemical safety in an attention economy?
Hello, I'm happy to be here at Michigan State University, even though I went to another large university in this state as an undergrad. But I'm here today to talk about newspapers and hype and words. Let's start with the word chemical. A few people have mentioned it already today. I found this slide as a simple definition with some cute examples. However, most people, particularly the people not sitting in this room, will hear the word chemical and think it's something bad, something undesirable, something unnatural, such as fluoride in the water or artificial dyes in food. I'm a scientist turned science writer. I have a Ph.D. in pharmacology. I worked as a researcher in both industry and academia before trading in all that glory for a journalism career. I started writing for publications that have scientist audiences, so I didn't have to shy away from using scientific terminology too much. Gradually, I learned to write for more general audiences and had long-term gigs with these two national newspapers. I also run writing workshops for Ph.D. students in the sciences, and two things I hammer home the most are the things that took me longest to learn: word choice and knowing your audience. The two are closely intertwined. Here's a piece I wrote in 2010 about the CDC's biomonitoring program. As you may know, reporters don't write their headlines. This one, trying to understand our chemical exposure. It's okay, but that word chemical all by itself bothers me a little bit. In the article itself, I use more descriptive terms such as man-made or modifiers such as man-made, which you see here in the subhead. Still isn't great because it's gendered. Today I'd probably use human-made or manufactured or find some other way to say that. Of course, I was going to have to name a number of chemicals in my piece. So I chose to open the article with a list of examples written in plain language. Let me read for you. Our modern-day environment is loaded with man-made chemicals. We breathe car exhaust, gasoline fumes, and secondhand smoke. Sorry, I lost my place. We eat food laced with pesticides and plasticizers, cooked in pans with nonstick coatings. We use cosmetics on our skin, cleaning products in our houses, and lawn products in our yards. We decorate our homes and clothe our kids with flame-retardant fabrics. And we drink municipal water that contains traces of pharmaceuticals and other chemicals. By establishing that range of things that the CDC looks up at the top of my article, and with everyday examples, I help the reader prepare for the vocabulary that's coming. Word choice is important. Here I brainstormed a list of synonyms for chemical, and you can see that some have a more positive vibe, and some have a more negative one. Again, I'm repeating what people have said before me. Some chemical or ingredients are natural, some are synthetic, two more words that carry implications of good and bad, even though neither word implies anything about their safety. It's crucial that we communicators think about how words are perceived beyond their precise or technical meaning. That's the audience part. Whenever you're writing or speaking, you should have some knowledge of who your audience is. Do they have grounding in science? Or do you need to be explicit about context and careful in explaining methodology? Are they familiar with scientific terminology, even the most basic terms? Sometimes I'd share my writing ideas with my husband on date night. I'd be all excited, jabbering about how brain cells adapt to pain stimuli, and he'd interrupt, "Remind me, what's a cell?" It was a good reminder for me to not assume too much. My educated husband, he knows what a cell is. But if I'm going to talk about them in that context, he wanted to be reminded what he needs to know about a cell before I went forward. Even with science-curious types, you can help your readers follow your reasoning by using everyday words and offering examples. All right, that's my quick spiel on good writing. Use plain language and attend to audience. Now let's move on to the trickiness of communicating benefits and risks. This little matrix is one I developed for personal reasons when my mother was in the hospital to help my overly anxious siblings be able to ask the doctor questions and not just nod as if they understood everything. The doc would pop in after hours of waiting for them to show up and announce what some tests showed and what they wanted to do next. No matter what is recommended, I told my brother, you can always ask, how will it help my mom? What are the risks? And what will happen if we choose not to do this? Ever since that time, I've found this matrix is applicable to a whole host of things: job decisions, parental situations. It's a useful template to use, a way to cover all the bases, whether you're writing or speaking about a food dye or fluoridated tap water. It's been back in the headlines again because RFK Jr. is apparently not a fan. The benefits of fluoride in drinking water are pretty clear. It strengthens tooth enamel and prevents cavities. Are there risks? A recent Scientific American article looked into the studies that are out there, and some have found negative effects on children's IQ scores. But that's with concentrations higher than what the recommended amounts are in tap water. So again, dose is important. My upstate New York town doesn't have fluoridated tap water, so my kids receive fluoride treatments at the dentist. However, not everyone goes to the dentist regularly. Lack of insurance or access or trust. So this is a classic public health issue. How can we help everybody? My matrix is just a starting place, a simple guideline to make sure you're taking a comprehensive approach to assessing risks and benefits. Because the title of my talk today mentions clickbait and the attention economy, I'll share this blog post I wrote about hype in health journalism. The article opens like this. Let me read. Cancer recurrence, antibiotic resistance, heart failure, attractive lips, all have been the subject of recently published medical research and subsequent news coverage. Yes, you read that right. The quest for attractive lips is on par with solving heart failure, at least when it comes to deserving a big, splashy news release. The point I was making is that sometimes clickbait journalism doesn't always start with a journalist. Sometimes it starts with the scientific journal. Sometimes it's hyped by a press release about a study. This study was published in JAMA Plastic Surgery and was entitled, By the Numbers, What Are the Most Attractive Female Lips? The study's stated rationale was to contribute to the creation of established guidelines, currently non-existent, for lip augmentation. One might wonder if the study authors weren't motivated to create demand. Still, the incentive for media clickbait is clear, no matter where it originates. It's about attention, and attention means revenue. Indeed, I found 4 news sites that picked up this story, 2 in the UK and 2 in the US. The stories name-dropped celebrities and ran with photographs of models, but they didn't discuss potential harms or costs of lip injections or implants, or that the ideal was based on the opinions of a small group of college students looking at photographs of white women. Only one of the 4 articles I read took a largely skeptical view. The reporter for The Verge wrote, and I quote, "If you've ever wanted to get plastic surgery based on the opinion of people from the internet, a new study is here to help." I wrote that blog post and this one for a website called Health News Review that was shut down in 2018 after losing its primary funder. The site had a 10-step method for analyzing news stories about health interventions. One of my tasks was to collect potential stories for reviews, which meant I scanned 26 news sites every morning looking for candidate articles. Surely that practice influenced how I read other material, such as one particular scene in The Little Prince. I recognized a product marketer and a consumer. Our little prince meets a salesperson who sells pills invented to quench thirst. 1 pill a week, and a person would no longer feel any need to drink. The prince is curious, and here I'll read from the book. The little prince speaks first. "Why do you sell these pills?" "They save so much time," the sales clerk said. "Experts have calculated that you can save 53 minutes a week." "And what do you do with those 53 minutes?" "Whatever you like." The prince considers this and then says to himself, "If I had 53 minutes to spend as I liked, I'd walk very slowly towards a water fountain." You see, the intervention, pills, and the claim of benefits, quenching thirst and saving time. However, our prince is unmoved by the supposed benefit. He recognizes that even if the pill works as it's marketed, as the experts attest to, it offers him no personal advantage. I can't help but be charmed by his skepticism. Is that 10? Yeah, I think so. Our primary work at Health News Review was to evaluate the quality of health articles that appeared in the news. Every review considered a list of 10 criteria, many more than my 4-cell matrix. For instance, does the story say how big the benefit is? Does it talk about the strength of the data? Does it consider harms? Our goal was twofold: to improve health journalism and also to aid the public in parsing health news stories. We focused on articles that covered some claim of a health benefit about a drug, a device, or a procedure. Here's the rest of the criteria, including some consumer-focused things. If I want this for myself, can I access it? How much does it cost? Is this thing better than what's already out there? For many years, we analyzed 2 to 3 stories every week, wrote point-by-point summaries, and gave star ratings. Unfortunately, you can't access it anymore. The website's totally gone, so it's a little sad. Side note, the poorest performer by our appraisal was foxnews.com. It was the only one of the 26 that never earned a 5-star rating for a health news story. So, what do you prefer? Solid reporting that leads to a comprehensive health story? Or hype and promises? That's an easy question in this room, but I can tell you that not all readers are with us. I wrote a Washington Post story about foods that help you sleep. You know what the answer is? None. Not practically. This was not popular. I wrote about things you shouldn't ingest in the evening, such as drinks containing caffeine or alcohol, and then I carefully debunked turkey, milk, chamomile tea, and even tart cherry juice. There was a study that had found the fruit juice had a significant effect in insomniacs. However, the lead author of that study told me, and I quoted this in the article, it was not a huge effect. Participants slept 8 more minutes per night on average, and it didn't do away with their insomnia. This is what I mean about quantifying the benefit. I enjoyed reporting that piece. I got to ask an interesting and clearly relevant question, and the experts I sourced were clear in their messaging. My commenters, however, were mad. Why? Well, let's start with the headline. To get better sleep, which foods should you seek and which should you avoid? That got people to read the article, but then they didn't find what I have to assume they hoped to find, what they felt they'd been promised, something new to try for better sleep. Instead, I provided a factual and nuanced telling of the evidence to date. I'm sorry to say that you can Google foods that help you sleep and find plenty of candidates without any consideration of the weaknesses of that evidence. I still tried out a favorite factoid from that piece. You'd have to eat a pound of turkey to get its sleep-inducing tryptophan effect. And then you'd likely to be so full that you wouldn't sleep very well. In my mind, the other side of hype is nuance. It's the other thing that's hard to communicate about scientific evidence. I've written about potential harms in consumer products, such as this Washington Post piece. Are parabens and phthalates harmful in makeups and lotions? As you've heard from the other speakers today, it can be a tricky business to deliver a crystal clear message while still communicating nuance and often scientific uncertainty. I'll read the opening to this one. It's up on the slide. Should you worry about the chemicals in your makeup, lotion, shaving cream, soap, and shampoo? The answer is a clear maybe. At least this time I warned my readers before plunging into the murky waters of scientific uncertainty. That's all I have for you. These 4 things are things I wanted to talk about with some stories from my own experience, and happy to talk more now or later at the panel or at the reception too.
Well, let's see if we have a couple of clarifying questions. If not, yep.
So I have kind of a question. When you're submitting sort of these stories, and what are you doing, or what should scientists do to help make sure that what they are writing and what their intentions are make it to the headline? Are there any kind of tips and tricks to make sure that it's not just pure clickbait, that it's actually something more reflective of what's in the article?
So like I say, I don't have any control over the headline. I always headed my articles, suggestively.
Yeah.
So whoever has that job is definitely trying to get people to read the articles, to click on it these days, or in the old days, to spend a little longer, at least read the top of the article, right? But scientists talking to reporters, I definitely have a lot of experience with that. And some people are very nervous about how I'm going to use what they're about to tell me, and if I'm looking for dirt or if I have gotcha questions. So I tend to start my interview by saying, here's the article I'm writing, here's what I imagine my audience is, I'm talking to you today for this because you are the author of this study, or because you see patients who come in and want to, know what this skin rash is, or whatever I was writing about. And also then during the interview process, as I'm asking questions and they're answering, if they're using a lot of technical jargon, we'll listen. I'll say, so what I think I hear you say is, and then I will say it in plain language. And sometimes they say, oh, yeah, that's exactly right, you got it. And I'm like, great, I'm on solid ground. I'll paraphrase them, I'm not going to quote that thing. Or they say, oh, not quite. And they give me that little bit of nuance that is what I really want. Or what's important to share with readers. Can I say this as a clear statement, or do I have to say, except in this situation or that condition?
So what can scientists who might be nervous to talk with a journalist, who might not have that experience or background, what can they do to prepare for an interview, to prepare to have their life's work presented to the public in a way that they hope is reflective of their outcome?
You can ask the journalist. So if it's an email introduction, you can email back and say, could you send me some example questions? And I'll always say yes, because I usually have 5 things that I need to know from them. But I say, but I'm going to ask you more than that, because things are going to come up as we're talking, But I'm also, the scientist is the expert. I'm asking them for info. I'm trying to not simplify, but translate a little bit for who I know my audience is, the readers of the Washington Post. Don't over-prepare, because you're likely to be over-preparing on some of the tiny details which are of less interest to a newspaper reporter.
Hi. So I've had reporters call me, and I've done some other bloggy things. And my concern is always, can I see what you took from me to make sure you interpreted it correctly? And what is the responsibility of the journalist? Because when I did that recently, they're like, well, we won't let you read the whole article, but you can see the part we attributed to you. I was like, well, kind of what I wrote influences the whole thing, but what is the responsibility to make sure that they really did get your message right, and what can you do to make sure that you don't get misquoted?
It depends on what the outlet is. So when I work for the Post, I cannot show you my whole article. And that's partly because it's my article. It's mine and the Post behind me, and which means my editors and the copy editor and everything else doing fact checking along the way. But I will offer, I can send the quotes that I'm going to use to you. And when I do that, I'm usually also would do a paraphrase, not just the actual quotes. I think I take care of that, this is me personally, on the phone when I'm interviewing you, because I'm going to be rephrasing back. What I hear you saying, oh, I think what my readers want to know is more this than that. Can you speak to that? Okay, now that we've got that, what I'm hearing you say is, I repeat back all the time to make sure, to give you the confidence that I'm getting the message. And by my rephrasing it, then it gives you a chance to tweak it and say, like, that's not quite right, or that's too simply stated. There's actually some nuance in there. Now, if it's an article for Michigan State University, then you get to read the whole thing. If you're on faculty here and somebody's writing a story about you in the research magazine. So it does depend on what the outlet is. But most journalism outfits, no, you can't read the whole article. You should be able to clear your quotes.
I have one question.
All right.
Actually, I was very surprised to hear that the journalist who wrote the article doesn't actually get to write the title. That really surprised me. So who is it that ultimately makes that call on the title?
I don't know. And, I've had people mistitle, and then we have to do a correction. Sometimes just swapping out which drug was good or which drug was bad or whatever it was. It's like, oh, they got it backwards. So I email my editor, and they change it.
Yeah.
I also find if I say anything about body weight, that will make it into the headline. So it's the Post, it's the newspaper knowing what's going to get readers' eyes on it. Losing weight is always a winner. Even if I'm not specifically writing about losing weight. If I say something has an effect on body weight, it often shows up in the headline.
And my other question then is, when somebody like yourself writes an article, especially in the area of science, doesn't have to be about what we're discussing today, is there anybody internally that actually, I hate to use the word fact checks it, but at least tries to make a...
Yeah, it depends again on the outlet. At the Post, I can tell you there's a copy editor who was very enthusiastic, read every paper, if I quoted from a paper, they found the sentence. If I quoted numbers from a paper, they would check the numbers. So, yeah, somebody's checking up on me.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.